The impudence, the audacity, the unmitigated gall of those knuckleheads of liberty podcasters, daring to voice opinions outside the mainstream of accepted thought. Listen if you dare. It's angry, it's funny, it's even sometimes sad, but it's always based on freedom and justice, as you will see. Here's our host, Jason McPhee.
Welcome to the Knuckleheads of Liberty. We're coming to you on November 28th, 2022, just a few days after Thanksgiving. And we're very thankful to be able to talk about school choice with Executive Director of the North Carolina Coalition for Charter Schools, Lindalyn Kakadelis. Let's jump right into it. Charter schools, boy, I tell you, school choice, all of these things are so important to the show. And so we love it whenever we're able to get a guest to talk a little bit more about that and to promote that, these ideas on school choice, because they're so important to changing the direction that things are going in the country and to promoting liberty. So as far as that goes, let's find out a little bit more about what's going on in North Carolina and with the North Carolina Coalition for Charter Schools. And Lindalyn, can you tell us a little bit about your efforts there, and what are some of the, activities and the mission of the North Carolina Coalition for Charter Schools?
Sure, Jason. Thanks for having me on with you guys today.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Well, it's my pleasure. The North Carolina Coalition for Charter Schools serves member charter schools by keeping our stakeholders actively informed about legislative issues. We advocate for equal charter school funding, and we seek autonomy of charter schools both at the statutory and regulatory level. We have about 209 charter schools in North Carolina. I think we've opened a few more recently, and we're right at that level. The cap was raised in 2011, so you can see, and that was a cap of 100. So we've doubled our charter schools since the cap was raised, and our charter school law was passed in 1995. We have 140,000 students attending charter schools throughout the state and 75,000 on waiting list. Our latest activity, I guess, has been the election. We are not a C3. We are a C6. So we can get actively involved in elections, and we did so this past November. In the North Carolina House, we recommended 71 races. Out of those races, 25 of them were uncontested, but 38 races that we recommended won. There were 8 races that we actively got involved in, and I'll tell you a little bit about what actively getting involved means. 6 of those races we won, 2 of those we lost, but the Republicans in the North Carolina House fell 1 seat short of a supermajority. In the Senate, we recommended 31 races. 13 of them were uncontested, but 16 races that we recommended won. There were 4 races that we actively got involved in. 3 of those races we won, and the North Carolina Senate now has a supermajority for the next 2 years. By actively involved, what I mean is we did what they call geofencing around charter schools, hopefully capturing stakeholders that that visit charter schools. We sent out 1.4 million digital ads, and we targeted 76,800 unique voters. There were 2 extremely contested races, one in the House, one in the Senate. We sent out over 18,000 text messages to get the vote out. But we were very excited to have that kind of winning victory here in North Carolina to see what we can further push in the charter school movement in our state.
So, Lindalyn, do you guys find, are you finding that your message is more resonating with parents since the COVID pandemic? I mean, there have been a lot of issues as a result of the pandemic. Are you guys finding this?
Definitely. In fact, the numbers have just been released by our Department of Public Instruction, showing that the district schools have declined in enrollment since between 2019 and 2022, while charter schools grew 6.4% between 21 and 22. But since 2019, we've had a 19.2% increase in enrollment. And again, while district schools are losing enrollment. And that's also true for homeschooling and private schools. We're seeing enrollment increases in all of those areas.
Okay. I had a quick question for you too. You talked about the geofencing going on, and so it's targeting those areas around schools. Is it mostly parents that you're having the success with? Because I know as a parent, it seems like these are the issues that hit you right in the face as far as how well you think the public school is doing. But if since there's an awful lot of voters who aren't parents, or at least aren't parents currently, or I guess have active kids that they're sending to school, are those harder to reach, or do you have success with all the people that you are messaging to?
We have success with everyone if it's phrased the right way, in the fact that is the child more important than the system? Should families have that option? And that resonates with everyone. However, interesting enough, targeting the parents and letting them know how fragile charter schools are and school choice overall, but it's fragile, it's politically fragile. And when they become aware of that, then they get their sphere of influence voting. And so what we have found, if we can get the parents active and motivated and hitting their sphere of influence, then it just multiplies our efforts.
Okay.
So where are you guys finding your biggest resistance? Is it the teachers unions?
Yes, but North Carolina is a right to work state. So the North Carolina Association of Educators brags that, we're not a union. We're not a union, but they are the affiliate of the NEA here. And the only thing that they don't do is collective bargaining, but they smell like a union. They quack like a union. They're basically a union. But we're a right to work state, and just trying to hit the myths. I mean, their grassroots efforts are just unbelievable. And there's some counties where we don't have a charter school. And so, and in those counties, the district school system is the largest employer. And so that's our big fight, is taking care of the myths that are put out by the union.
Could you give us one example of the myths that the unions put out?
There's four major ones, but one is we drain money from the district schools. We don't drain money. We take a child. The money follows the child. And that's what they don't like. They want money to follow a system, not money following a child. In North Carolina, we have an allotment model of funding. And so we're one of 7 states that still funds systems. And we're trying to move to student funding so that the money will follow the child. Right now, charter schools get, the last research we found out was about 73 cents on the dollar for the local funding. Our state funding is closer, but our local funding is not.
Well, it sounds like from the numbers you talked about all the raising the cap and adding more charter schools and many kids on the waiting list, that people are certainly seem to be voting with their feet, that's the way they want to go with their kids. But are there other metrics of success that that you can point to, or are there things that you can cite as far as a performance comparison that might help people in figuring out whether charter schools are right for them or all? Well, okay, I'll leave it at that. I wanted to expand a little bit on exactly what a charter school is too, compared to other. Let's get into that first. What makes charter schools different from just the regular public schools?
Well, charter schools are public schools that are governed by a board, a nonprofit board that are pulled together. They're not elected, but a nonprofit board fills out an application, which is not for the faint of heart. And they file that application with the Department of Public Instruction. The State Board of Education then gives the approval and gives the charter to that nonprofit board, and then the nonprofit board will run the charter school. Now, in North Carolina, we have what we call education management organizations, or charter management organizations, and they are either for-profit or not-for-profit management companies that the nonprofit board hires as a vendor. They're just a vendor, and they can run a charter school. Some of the national ones that you may know about are National Heritage Academies,
Nice.
Charter One out of Arizona. We have Charter Schools USA, and then we have some homegrown EMOs. Classical Charter Schools of America is a homegrown management company. They have 4 schools in the state, but anyway, that nonprofit board then is responsible for starting the school and running the school. And the statute in North Carolina is really good. We're on a performance model of accountability and not a rules-based accountability model, which means that charter schools are reviewed annually on their governance, their operations, their finance, and their performance. If they are found non-compliant in any of those areas, then the charter school is shut down. And we don't have a problem shutting bad schools down. It's really interesting. Bad restaurants go out of business. Bad district schools never go out of business.
Right.
Bad charter schools go out of business.
Yeah. Well,
But now the closest thing we have to universal school choice we have in Arizona, which came into effect recently. Is it your goal to try to get this in North Carolina? Is to have something like that where we have some sort of universal school choice? Is that the hope and the dream of your organization?
Now that is a hope and a dream of citizens of North Carolina. My organization strictly focuses on charter schools, but in North Carolina, we have a larger organization called Parents for Educational Freedom in our state. PEFNC is the website. And that organization is heavily involved in getting something passed like what was in Arizona, where the money follows the child. And we do have opportunity scholarships, but they are for lower income families, but that is increasing every year. And that is a separate line item in our budget. That's not included education dollars. That was a whole new program that was started. I think it was started around 2018.
No.
I think,
I have a.
oh, sorry. Go ahead, Tim.
Just a quick question, and kind of piggyback on your previous one about the differences between the regular schools and charter schools. If I was a child and I was going to a charter school, how would that be different for me in my experience and my potential for learning between a charter school and a regular school?
Charter schools are usually smaller. Charter schools, a student can cross county lines. So it has nothing to do with your zip code. Where a district school, in many cases, they will have a magnet school program, but you're assigned to a school based on your zip code. Charter schools are all schools of choice. And so going back to my analogy of bad restaurants, if a nonprofit board has a great idea, wants to start a charter school, but they can't get any parents to send their children, they go out of business. So charter schools have to listen to their customer, which is the family, the mom and the dad, where your district schools, I've only known a few to what we would say go out of business, get shut down. And that's because of the gentrification of neighborhoods, and there's just not enough kids, and they'll consolidate schools. But you never hear of a district school being shut down because of their performance. Where in charter schools, we will shut them down if they cannot perform at least as good as well as the district school that they reside in.
I thought that was interesting too when you mentioned about the zip code tyranny, I guess, of this is where you have to go to school because this is just where you're from. I think it was Heritage or somebody put out a little video analogy that I thought was great. If most people kind of get the analogy that suppose we did food this way, and that we had a government cafeteria in every district, and you had to get all your food from there, So, and don't worry, the experts told us it was good food, so you just go there and that's your choice.
I had a real, what I call a branding experience, something you'll never forget. While I was serving on the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Board of Education, I'll never forget a parent that came in and was graciously but assertively sharing how the schools was not meeting his child's needs. And my board chair at that time was explaining how everyone sitting at the table there, all members of the Board of Education, cared deeply for the 140,000 students that were in the school system. The parent listened. And then when my board chair got finished talking about how much we cared about the students, and we did care about the 140,000 students, the parent said, well, since you care so much, could you please tell me the name of my child? And there was dead silence.
Yeah.
in the boardroom that night.
I imagine the best they could do is, well, your child is number 122,330.
There was silence by my board chief. I mean, literally, it was microphone drop time. And the parent just said, thank you very much, and went and sat down. And I'm sure that parent withdrew his child the next day.
Yeah, this is one of the things I think a lot of people get sort of hoodwinked about, is the idea that somehow the government, I guess, is more responsive and caring more about the individual, as if magically somehow administrators in government, have this personal connection with everyone.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and I will say, as one member of the Board of Education, I was doing the best I could to make decisions for 140,000 students.
Yes.
But that doesn't take into account at all the individual child. And
you see, usually I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Usually with these bureaucracies, you're talking about 140,000 kids. The best these bureaucracies can do is one size fit all. And those one size fit all never works for individuals, because usually you have a smart kid, a brilliant kid who should be pushed ahead, or a kid who is probably a little bit lagging behind, who need a little bit of special attention. You have these sort of things. But when you have a large bureaucracy dealing with 140,000 kids, there's no way you can serve the needs of all of those children. And this is a real problem with the public schools as it is presently structured. And that's why I think your organization and organizations like yours need to do more work in terms of getting money to follow children, so parents could be making these choices.
And I really do think the trends in our country are going that way, despite the teachers' unions. And I tell my friends in the education establishment that, get the palpitation of heart when you start talking about money following a child. I mean, they just freak out. When I was growing up, we're not going to talk about age, okay? We just won't talk about age. But when I was growing up, we had chocolate, vanilla, and strawberry ice cream. And if you were, really lucky, you could get Neapolitan. Well, right now we have Chunky Monkey ice cream. But vanilla, chocolate, and strawberry have not gone away. They've gotten better. We have creamy vanilla, homemade vanilla, vanilla bean vanilla ice cream. And the same thing with TV channels. When I was growing up, we had ABC, NBC, CBS. Yes. Well, now we have the Golf Channel. So, just take a chill pill and relax. But I think we are going to see all kinds of educational, especially since COVID, we're going to see all kinds of educational providers pop out. And I think that's a good thing to happen, because it will meet the unique needs of children, or families will leave. It also, I believe, helps with whether your curriculum is going to have a more liberal bent or a more conservative bent. The parent can make that choice for their child, and not have what sometimes the liberals think everybody needs. We want this kind of social studies. Well, no, some parents want history and geography. They don't want social studies. They want Latin to begin in 4th grade. We have some classical charter schools. They literally begin Latin in 4th grade.
Yeah. Yeah, I loved your analogy too with the ice cream, because I always think of it too as like, you'd be a miracle if you go through a school cafeteria and you actually have a choice on an ice cream day of more than one flavor of ice cream, and yet like we have 31 flavors in the or in the private sector rather, right?
Yes.
That's just like would be blow a bureaucrat's mind to think that they had to select 31 flavors that the public might like.
When as an elected official, I always felt the pressure, and I told my colleagues, we need to err on the side of freedom and take care of abuses.
Yes.
Instead of
Yes.
trying to make rules and regulations to take care of all the abuses, you will never make enough rules and regulations. But we need to err on the side of freedom and then take care of the problems.
I like that. I like what you just said, and I think I'm going to steal it. I wouldn't give you any credit, but I think I'm going to steal it.
Good, fine with me.
Well, if you're not giving any credit, that'd make you an awful lot like Joe Biden.
But you remember what Reagan said: if we really don't care who gets credit, we can get a lot accomplished.
There you go. There you go. Yes.
Well, Lindalyn, I have a question I like to ask of every guest who comes on the show, because, and this is tied largely into the way our schools are set up as well, but a lot of us don't get any sort of training on the importance of liberty or any of that as we come through the school system. A lot of times it's because, I think the schools are generally run by government, and the idea that, solutions should be government solutions often is what's taught, in a lot of the schools. And so a lot of us, it's like we're really slow to waking up to liberty for me, I was in my 30s, I think, before I even found Milton Friedman. What was it that woke you up to some of these issues, of liberty? What rang your liberty bell, I guess?
Having children and seeing how different they were. There's not one child alike, and they have unique needs. And then serving on the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Board of Education for a couple of terms. I think that really opened my eyes in the dedicated people that work within the system, but their hands are tied.
Right.
And then I was able to be the executive director of the Children's Scholarship Fund in Charlotte, and we had private money at that time. And I helped over 400 families find the best niche for their child, whether it was homeschooling, whether it was a private education. It was real interesting. One time I had a family who the mom and dad passed away. The children had to go live in another county, and they needed to stay in their school. That was the only stabilizing entity they had in their life. And we were able to pay the local money for the district school for the children to be able to stay in their district school, even though they lived in another county. And at that point in time, I said, the money needs to follow the child. And it really boils down to this: which is more important, the system or the child? And I'll always fall on the side of the child.
So this concept of the money following the child, which I think is a beautiful and wonderful thing if we could get it fully implemented. But do you think we are getting that message across? Do you think we are really and truly, as parents, really starting to wake up to this idea? Are they seeing the failures in the public schools as they should? Because I think the COVID really illuminated a lot of things. But are the parents really waking up, do you think?
I think they are. I think we're seeing the tipping point happen in some states. You mentioned Arizona for one. We see it in Florida. School choice is booming, and parents are beginning to understand that it is a political decision. I think, it used to be that your neighborhood school was like apple pie, Chevrolet, and motherhood, and you'd never go against it. But I think now parents are going, wait a minute, what's wrong with me having a choice in my child's education? What's wrong with them listening to the customer? I mean, that's what the teachers unions don't want to do. They don't want to listen to the customer. That's why they were, labeling parents terrorists at school board meetings. Yes. Well, the parents felt like they had to do that to get their voice heard. Well, at a charter school, if you get enough parents to leave, the business model collapses. which is a great thing. Another branding experience I had with being on the Board of Education, one of my colleagues one night, I was showing them by our decisions, we were having empowered parents were leaving. They were quietly leaving. I had the trend lines. And that was before we had any kind of opportunity scholarship or any other choice in North Carolina, and before charter schools even. And I had one of my colleagues looked at me and said, quote, "I don't give a damn, let them leave."
Wow.
Well, if that's your mentality, how do you have any choice? How do you have any chance of influencing the system?
Yes.
Yeah, that's terrible, especially if they think they can just keep the money. Lindalyn, as we're getting close to the end of the show here, and by the way, Lynn, we forgot to put up the website. Can you share the website real quick?
Yes, the website. Okay, Lynn, he's doing that. It's www.nc.chartercoalition.org.
Okay. And so, Lindalyn, did you want to share with us any, I guess, in the end here, any challenges your organization is facing? And are there any messages, too, that you'd like to leave our audience with as we wrap up?
I think our biggest challenge, like I said, is taking care of the myths. And like I mentioned one, that charter schools drain money from the system. No, they take a child and the money follows the child. Charter schools don't academically perform as well. No, that's a myth. They perform as well or better, or they get shut down. Charter schools are resegregating. No, charter schools are a school of choice. You cannot deny the enrollment of a student based upon their race. I could go on, but charter schools are the first line of, I think, defense when people go after school choice. And so that's why we all need to, when you're in the grocery store, when you're at the beauty shop, make education an issue and talk about school choice. And that's what it's going to take for that tipping point to happen.
Yeah. It really seems like, school choice, if we really want change in the country, it has to start there. That just seems like such a foundational, pivotal issue if we really want to change the messages and the thinking. It's just, seems to be stuck in people's mind on the current course. I mean, we have $31 trillion of debt in the country and nobody even talks about it. It's just like it's not there. And it's, I think we're starting to hit the wall. But,
I do too.
Yeah, and the teachers' unions are really getting in the way of us properly educating the next generation. And the next generation is where the leaders of our great land is supposed to come from. And the teachers' unions are out there every day trying to stop progress. It's horrible.
Leon, you're exactly right. And if we do not start educating our populace, if we do not start educating them to read and write and logically think, then we will lose our country.
Yeah,
indeed.
And that's a great note to leave it on. It's a sad note, but it's hopefully an inspiring note that, hey, we really got to get something done here. But thanks so much today for joining us, Lindalyn. And we're actually going to have you on another podcast where we can talk about some other educational related issues. So if you're listening to this, go check out that podcast as well. Thanks so much, and we will see you next time. Until then, stay free.
Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, always and forever.
Thank you for listening to the Knuckleheads of Liberty podcast. Find us on Facebook, Rumble, YouTube, your favorite podcast network, and at knuckleheadsofliberty.com.